Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to bear witness to this truly wonderful and holy matrimony between Beauty and Beast. Do you, London, take Buford T. Beaver to be your lawfully wedded beaver?
I do.
And do you, Buford T. Beaver, take London to be your lawfully wedded toast host? Yeah, I'm gonna need some verbal confirmation.
We only have the limo till 5. Can we just keep going?
Of course, yes. Then by the powers vested in me by the church and the state, I hereby dub the whatever the hell this is. You may now pose for the group photo. Go, girl.
From Buena Vista Television, it's BVTV Tonight. Tonight's guests are Art Cullen and musical performance by Justin Graf. Tonight's segment is Beaver Mad Libs. Tonight's game is Who Said That? Kendrick or Twain? And here's your host, London Van Horbeck.
Welcome to our semester finale here at BVTV Tonight. Can you believe it? We made it 4 episodes this semester. We have a great episode for you guys tonight. We have Pulitzer Prize winner and Storm Like Times editor Art Cullen here. I'll be asking him all the burning questions you have, like whether it's pronounced Pulitzer or Pulitzer. There's a difference, apparently. It's like how a lot of people pronounce Buena Vista. I don't know what's up with that. My mom says Bona Vista. It's really weird. We actually have a segment later tonight that involves a lot of words. Beaver Mad Libs, based on BVTV Tonight characters. We also have a special musical guest, Justin Graf. He's here to talk to us about aliens and how they're definitely real and definitely being hid from us. Oh, no, sorry, that's just the name of the band. It's called Other Life Forms. Yeah, it was a really bad joke, especially because I actually know a lot of people in the band, but anything for the joke, you know? Showbiz. We're also going to be testing both of our awesome guests in a game of Who Said That? It could be either Pulitzer Prize winner Kendrick Lamar or classic American writer Mark Twain. Stay tuned for this and more on this semester's final episode of BVTV Tonight. First guest needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. His role as editor and co-owner of the Storm Lake Times has led him to receiving a Pulitzer for distinguished editorial writing. Welcome to our first guest, Art Cullen. Hi. So, welcome to the show. Did you find your way here okay?
No, it took me about an hour to get 6 blocks.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, I know I can get lost for an hour on this campus. So, now you recently won the Pulitzer, and I bet you've done a lot of interviews about it since then, around your famous journalism. So how do you like to relax after all the interviews and the hard day at work with your with the Storm Lake Times?
Well, I'm a political news junkie, so I just continue gorging myself on news all night long. I lead that, and during baseball season, I watch the Minnesota Twins every night, watch them lose.
I have a friend who's really into the Twins.
I lead a pretty boring life, in other words.
Well, I mean, you did win a Pulitzer, so it's got to have something interesting going on.
Right. I don't do country line dancing.
So did you grow up in Storm Lake?
Yeah, I was born here in 1957 and
Okay.
went to school at St. Mary's.
Okay. And so how do you think that affected you in how you view the Storm Lake area and the Midwest in general?
Well, you know, most of us, when we're young, want to get out, as I did. I wanted to leave Storm Lake and probably never come back and go to the Twin Cities and eventually become a national correspondent for a great American newspaper. But, you know, when you get a few gray hairs, Storm Lake actually looks pretty good. And so growing up here, it was a lot different community, and it really, I think it gives me a greater perspective on the dynamic that's going on in Storm Lake.
Okay, so how does it affect the way you write specifically for your books or for the newspaper?
Well, I'd like to think it gives me some depth that others may lack. Having been here, I've worked at other newspapers in Iowa, Ames and Algona and Mason City, different sized towns. And so I'd like to think that maybe my experience here, growing up here and understanding Storm Lake, being a longtime Beaver fan, gives me some depth that, you know, a lot of editors at smaller newspapers are moved through every 5 years, you know, the up or out philosophy, and so it's kind of unusual for an editor to be at a newspaper for, you know, 30 years.
Wow, wow. So do you think, what led you to becoming a journalist?
Well, I went to school at the College of St. Thomas in St. Paul, now the University of St. Thomas, up in Minnesota, and I had flunked accounting, and I wanted to major then in theater, and they told me I had to read Shakespeare, and so I got out of that, and I wanted to major in music, and they explained to me that I couldn't play the piano and I didn't have a very good voice. So I looked in the college catalog for the easiest major at St. Thomas, and it appeared to be journalism. The only requirement was that you had to type 25 words a minute, and I could do 26. And so I majored in journalism.
Just
That's
beating
what
that.
And it was also the Watergate era, 1974, 75. That was the second largest major at St. Thomas at that time was journalism. Everybody wanted to work for the Washington Post.
Yeah, because of all the drama that
Watergate.
was happening. So did you grow up reading the local newspaper, or when you were in St. Paul, did you read the newspaper there?
Oh yeah, I mean, growing up, you know, I was a sports fanatic, and so we would fight over the sports section to get the local high school scores and to see if our friends' pictures were in there, because mine never was, because I was no good at sports, but I'd look for my friends' photos and their scores. And yeah, and going to school, I of course, since I finally settled on journalism, I did read, and I learned to read on the Des Moines Register, their big peach sports section and their comic section, and you know, I've read a newspaper my whole life, and unfortunately most Americans aren't anymore, and that's how we get people like Donald Trump in the White House.
Okay. So did you have a dream job growing up?
Well, I ran the movie projectors at the Vista Theater, and I thought that would be a pretty nice occupation. I got free popcorn, and it was air conditioned, and I got to watch Midnight Cowboy, which was rated X, and I was 14 years old. and Last Tango in Paris, and the director of that just died, by the way, and so I thought that was, I could see a career as a movie projectionist, and then they automated it, so I had to major in journalism.
You got kicked out of your dream job there.
Right.
So you've worked at Storm Lake Times for 30 years now, right?
Well, since 1990, so 28.
Yeah, going on almost to 30 years. So you've probably met a lot of people and heard a lot of stories. So what is, in your opinion, your most interesting story that you've done here in Storm Lake?
Well, I think the most interesting story and the weirdest story we have done was a story about a woman who murdered a young man in early Iowa. Her name was Tracy Richter, and she murdered a young man, 19 years old, named Dustin Weedy, and it took 10 years to bring charges against her.
Oh,
And
geez.
it was she was trying to frame her husband, and it was a very ex-husband, and it was a very, very strange murder story. And that was in fact, somebody wrote a book about it, which I have not read. And Tracy Richter is now serving a life sentence for murder.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And and the other story was the biggest story we've done was covering the Des Moines Waterworks lawsuit, which is what led us to a Pulitzer Prize.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. And if you want to see
You have a bottle of whiskey in there? Oh, that's my book.
Yeah, if you want to learn more about and see more of Art's work, you can get his book, Storm Lake, A Chronicle of Change, Resilience, and Hope from a Heartland newspaper. So now we're going to move on to the fun part of the interview. We're going to play a little bit of Mad Libs.
This is not the book about the murder, by the way. This is a book about immigration, agriculture, the environment, and how it all swirls around this little community, this little college town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so check that out if you're interested in more of stories from Storm Lake.
Right.
So now for our little game here. So have you played Mad Libs before?
No.
Okay, so basically, like
I said, all I do is watch cable news and the Minnesota Twins, so I don't play any games.
Yeah. So basically, I'll give you a kind of word, so like a verb, and then you make up a word. So you don't know what the whole story is until we get to the end and we put all the words into the blank spaces of the story.
Okay.
So.
You'll have to help me out here.
So the first word that you have to come up with is time. So like an era of history or like 6 p.m., that kind of thing.
Okay. So I need to come up with a time.
Time.
1957.
Okay. So then the next one is a verb ending in ing.
Running.
Okay. And then the next one's easy. It's also a verb ending in ing.
Oh,
Yeah.
a verb ending in ing. Singing.
Okay. And the next one is a type of animal.
Dog.
Okay. And then another type of animal. There's a lot of animals in this one.
An armadillo.
A what?
Armadillo.
Armadillo? Okay. All right, and the next one is an adverb ending in ly.
Gingerly.
Okay, that's a good one. Another animal.
Bear.
Okay. Part of the body.
Nose.
Okay. A type of transportation.
Car.
Okay. And then 2 more animals.
Cat.
Okay.
And a parrot.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Now what do you do with all that?
Oh, there's one more, and it's just any random word.
Obfuscate.
What was that?
Obfuscate.
Obfuscate. What does that mean?
OBFUS to cover up reality.
Okay, that's
cover
pretty
up
cool.
the view of things.
Okay, so here is the story that you've just put together. Once upon in 1957, Buddy Beaver was running. While he was running, he spotted a dog. Being the curious beaver that Buddy is, he went up to the dog to see what it was doing. As Buddy gingerly walked up to the dog, it started to run away. Buddy tried to catch him, but he was too slow. He even got into a car to try and catch the dog. It was only then that Buddy was able to grab its nose to ask what it was doing. Although the dog just looked at him and said, obfuscate. So, I mean, it kind of fits together.
Okay, well, that's almost poetry.
Yeah, that's, I mean, ad-libs is it's a kind of poetry.
Yeah.
So that was our dramatic tale of Buddy the T Beaver.
Okay.
And then.
Is this what, can you major in that at BV? Or
Oh yeah, you can major in
can
Mad Libs
study
at
this?
BV.
Is
Yeah,
this what they teach?
it's a major that we have. It's a combination of
Good.
almost every different major, every class. Every major puts
Right.
in one class that they think you should put for that kind of thing. Or you could just major in animation and animate the story instead.
Right.
There's Buddy Beaver. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you.
And we will be right back after these messages. Welcome back. Our second guest is a biomedical science major with a minor in history, but he still has the time to shred it on a guitar. Welcome, Justin Graf. So, Justin, what is it that you do on campus?
Well, like you said, I'm a biomedical sciences major, minoring in history, but in my free time, what I like to do is just record music on my computer in my free time, stuff like that.
So they never got you to convert to doing music production major at all?
No,
No?
that's
Okay.
not for me. I don't think I could be a career musician. It's a whole different line of work, and I don't really see myself doing it.
Okay, just a hobby for you right
Yeah,
now.
just a hobby.
I can understand that. So, like, you think it's important for everybody to have hobbies that are completely separate from your major?
Well, they don't have to be completely separate, but in many cases, I think music and other types of art are a great hobby for a lot of people.
Okay. Yeah, I can agree. I, for one, can very much agree. So why did you choose to play the guitar instead of some other instrument?
It's a good question. When I was way back when I was in 8th grade, my dad kind of just came in my room, plopped a guitar in there, and he had played guitar when he was a kid, and he played for most of his life, and so I kind of just took it up when he gave it to me then.
Okay, so like a family tree kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what is it that you enjoy about making your music?
It's just kind of a fun way to express yourself. There aren't a whole lot of rules, so you can go kind of whatever creative direction you like, and as long as you're kind of doing what's true to your heart, then no one can really tell you that you're doing it wrong.
So when you're making music, do you always do it by yourself, or do you have other people with you in a band or something?
Not always by myself. I usually just record by myself because it's more convenient time-wise, but I am doing a class called Instrument Ensemble where I'm performing with other musicians, and that's a lot of fun to do as well.
Okay.
But most of the time, like when I write my own music, it's usually just me doing it, but I occasionally like collaborate with other people when it's, convenient time-wise and whatnot.
And you worked with the band Other Life Forms that was
Yes.
on campus.
I filled in for them. They needed a bass guitar player because theirs was otherwise disposed, and so I filled in and had a lot of fun doing that role.
Okay. So do you have any interesting stories from that band or any of the other bands that you've been involved in on campus?
What do you mean by interesting?
Well, something funny, but still, TV ready.
It was a good experience. I don't know if I'd say anything extremely interesting happened. It's mostly just you kind of show up, you play the music, you learn how to do the songs. It was a lot of fun. I don't know. I don't know if there was anything extremely interesting that stood out.
Okay. So ideally, what would you see your musical career being? It's just a hobby, but what would you see the future of it in your life being?
It's a good question. I'm okay with it just being a hobby, but after I finish college and everything, when I have more free time, I do plan on getting it recorded a bit more professionally, like putting it on YouTube and just sort of having that as a side hobby, and that's kind of where I'm aiming for right now.
Okay. So where can people find your music or find you?
Can find me either in the Science Building or in Pierce White, but
Or like online. Can they find you on Twitter or Instagram or anything?
no, just Facebook.
Okay. Okay. Well,
I haven't published any of it yet.
Okay. Well, hopefully you do get that, and you get a lot of fans from BV that are rooting for you. For now, we're gonna play a game. In the age of great philosophers, we have to ask ourselves, who said what? So we are going to be doing Kendrick Lamar or Mark Twain. We're going to have Art come back in, and it's going to be a little head-to-head action for you guys here.
This is competition?
Oh yeah, it's a rip-roaring competition.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
So the rules of the game are simple. You just have to guess whether, I'm going to give you a quote, and then you guess whether it was said by Kendrick Lamar or Mark Twain. So the first one is, my rights, my wrongs, I write 'em till I'm right with God.
Kendrick?
Mark Twain.
It is Kendrick.
Okay.
It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog.
Twain.
Yeah, Mark Twain.
That is correct. It is Mark Twain. Although the butterfly and the caterpillar are completely different, they are one and the same.
Twain.
Kendrick Lamar.
That was Kendrick Lamar. We're getting head-to-head action here. I got loyalty. I got loyalty inside my DNA.
Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick.
That it was Kendrick Lamar.
Mark Twain had never heard of DNA.
Yeah.
The report of my death was an exaggeration.
That's Mark Twain.
Twain.
That is Mark Twain. Kindness is the language which the deaf can hear, and the blind can see.
Lamar.
I agree, Lamar.
That it was actually Mark Twain.
Wow.
Oh.
Bad. I'm bad.
All right, this one's a long one, so listen close. I remember you was conflicted, misusing your influence. Sometimes I did the same, abusing my power, full of resentment that turned into a deep depression, and found myself screaming in the hotel room.
Kendrick Lamar.
Lamar.
That was Kendrick Lamar. It was pretty intense ones there.
I think so.
So that was really insightful. I think we all learned a little something about ourselves. I gotta say, I probably wouldn't have gotten most of them right anyway. So the fact that you guys got a lot of it right was pretty cool. So we are gonna take a quick commercial break, but we will be right back with a special musical performance by Justin Graf. So stick around. for Justin. Woo! Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And also a big thank you to Art Cullen. A big thank you to Art Cullen for taking your time out of your busy schedule.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And that's all we have for this semester, folks. I hope you enjoyed a ride on this Beaver train. And thank you for watching, and have a good night.